Okay, Rabbi, we're starting about Parashat Balak. Now, this parasha, the truth is, right, is probably one of the most fascinating things that we have in the Torah. This portion. Why is that? Because we have something here which is very unique spiritually. So there's all kinds of spiritual depth in these things. What we're talking about here. Let's start to a little bit to understand the story, right? The narrative, how it begins. First of all, right, what was the narrative? The narrative is that Jews are now in the desert and they're about to go into Eretz Israel. They've already been in the desert for 40 years. We're talking about now after the 40 years of the stay in the desert, they're about to go in. They're looking for a way to get inside Eretz Israel, to find an avenue, to a path to get in there. So now what happens is all of a sudden rises up this guy. His name is Balak, right? Balak. Who was Balak? Balak was the king of Moab, one of the countries over there that was in that area, right? Who? I'm sorry.
We talked about Ace. Was it Asa we're talking about?
No, no, this is not. No. This is a different country. We talked about that before, right? Regarding that. Now Balak was the king of Moab, and Balak was very threatened by the presence of the Jews over there in that area. He said, we have over here 2 million Jews hanging around right on my backyard. And they've already destroyed the other nations that were around there. They already fought wars against great nations and beat them. So Balak was like thinking, looks who's next on line? Me, I'm gonna get trampled over here. So he said, we got to do something to avoid this problem. So he devised a plan. What was the plan? He saw right that this nation doesn't operate by the laws of nature. They're above nature. You know what I mean? Kadosh Baruch Hu makes miracles for them. It's all miraculous. It's all not in the within the. It's not doesn't work the natural way. So he said, therefore, I also have to do something to combat them in a unnatural way, right? Something which is above nature. I also have to use this method. Otherwise, you can't fight with them. You can't fight with them in a natural way. You come out with them with against them with guns. You can't fight with them like that. They're invincible. So he said, just like their leader Moshe Rabbeinu is a spiritual leader. He's not like a physical leader. Some kind of a powerhouse, muscular guy. Bodybuilder. He's not like that. He's spiritually powerful. All the power of the Jewish people is spiritual. So he says we also have to find a way to combat that on the same scale. We have to go tit for tat with them. So the question was, how do you do that, right? So this guy Balak, he wasn't a regular guy. This guy, right? He wasn't a regular leader. He wasn't like the leaders that we have today, politician, professional politician for life, like this guy. What do they call him, right? Bernie and right this guy. The vice president? What's his name? What do they call that guy? The one who's running for president. Biden. Right, Biden. These guys, right? These guys are career politicians. We know who they are already. We've seen them already. They have history. Right, exactly. So this guy Balak was not like that at all. This guy was a sorcerer. He was a magician. Yeah, exactly. Right. He was a warlock. Right. If male is warlock, female is witch. Right. So he was a male. So what does that mean? That this guy had a tremendous expertise how to do sorcery. That was the idea, What was the expertise that he had? Right? His name is Balak ben Tzipor. They say, right? That was his name. So they say, what does that mean? Tzipor, in Hebrew, what does that mean? It means a birdie, right? Bird. He controlled the birds, whatever. So he controlled the birds, right? So this guy was also controlling birds. What does that mean? Why was his name Ben Tzipor? They say he used to have a bird that he used to use for sorcery, What was this bird made out of? It was made out of all kinds of metallic ingredients, metals and all kinds of things. It was a little doll, a little birdie doll. You know what I mean? A little birdie doll, right? So what happened was that it was made by all kinds of deep, concentration with all kinds of witchcraft and sorcery. All kinds of things were put into this. This was not just a physical kind of thing. So what would happen was that he did all the sorcery that he used to do. This guy Balak was with the birdie. This birdie. The birdie was the whole sorcery. That was the idea. He would look at the birdie, he would do all kinds of prayers, all kinds of seances, to all kinds of rituals with that birdie, all kinds of things. His whole life was with that bird. That was the idea, So once he would do all these things, that birdie would tell him all kinds of things, secrets, about things that he needs to know.
A little birdie
A little birdie told me, right? Exactly, right, right. That's the idea, right? All these things, So this guy was a birdie guy, right? He was an amazing sorcerer, but he knew like certain techniques, sorcery, but he was also lacking some techniques. There were some techniques he didn't know so well. So therefore, in order to complement his skills, he brought the other guy, who had those skills that he didn't have.
Sounds like something Gosha was.
Right. So now, right, who was that? This was Bil'am. Bil'am. So Bil'am, what was his specialty? Right? Bil'am was a very, very interesting character, very colorful character. Right? What's a colorful character? Even more colorful than your shirt, right? What does that mean? That this guy, first of all, we have to know who was he, Bil'am. Bil'am was actually from the family of the Jews. What does that mean? Right? That we had Avraham Avinu, right? And Avraham Avinu had an uncle whose name was Lavan. That's where he went to the house of Lavan to marry his wives from him, his daughters. So what happened was that Lavan was a sorcerer. We discussed this before, right? When we were talking about those issues. Laban was a great sorcerer himself, and he also was on a very high level in sorcery. Very, very expert. So what happened was that Lavan was also anti-Semite. He was number one anti-Semite. Even more than those squad ladies. Those squad ladies compared to this guy were nothing. You know what I mean? Forget about it, right? So what happens is now, Lavan, who was the biggest anti-Semite, he tried to destroy the Jewish people with sorcery, with all kinds of things. When Yaakov Avinu was in his house, he tried to destroy him many ways, but it didn't work. You know why? Because the sorcery doesn't work against the tzaddik. You know what I mean? Because the side of the good is better than the side of the bad. It's more powerful. So a person who comes from the side of the good always can win over the side of the bad if he's big enough, if he's expert enough, he's righteous enough. So what happened was that Lavan had a son whose name was Beor. One of his sons name was Beor. And Beor had a son, and that was Bilam. Understand? So Bilam was from the same family as Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak and Yaakov, all one big extended family. You understand? Like Esau also, it's all one family, basically. All one. Ishmael also, right? All these players came from Avraham Avinu. Right? What do you see from there, by the way? That Avraham Avinu, his children, his descendants, were the rulers of the world, because that's who rules over the world, basically. You have three groups, right? You have the Christians, you have the Jews, and you have the Muslims, right? All from Avraham Avinu, these people. They all came from one root. You understand? So what happened was that he called Bilam, because Bilam had also amazing powers in sorcery. But his powers were in a different area, right? What was the two, comparatively speaking, right? What were the powers of this one and that one? So Balak knew to find the right place to curse from. If you want to curse somebody, you want to put a hex on him, some kind of a spell, right, whatever. He knew the places, the locations that you had to go. This kind of thing. So Bil'am was expert not in locations, but he was expert in timing. What time to do the curse, what time to do the sorcery. You understand? That was the idea. So these two now, when they got together, they were a very formidable force. You know what I mean? Getting together, these two great sorcerers of the generation, nobody like them in sorcery. You know what I mean? Unbelievable power. They say about Bilam, by the way, that he was also somewhat of a prophet as well. He had prophecy, all kinds of things. But his prophecy, we'll see, was coming from the side of the Tumah, of the evil. There's also a prophecy like that. The Goyim in general, right? The Goyim, if they have a prophet, today, by the way, they don't have any prophets. But in the old days, they used to have prophets. Their prophecy comes from the side of evil, from the side of the Satan. It doesn't come from the side of good. You know why? Because that's their side. That's their location. You understand? It comes from there. So what happened was that Bil'am was prophet. He was, by the way, the last prophet that the Goyim had. After that, they had no prophecy anymore. No more prophecy. Kadosh Baruch Hu took away prophecy from them. What's the reason why Kadosh Baruch Hu took away prophecy from the Goyim? Because Bil'am did so much damage with his prophecy, with the powers that he had. Kadosh Baruch Hu said, you know what, to the Goyim, you don't deserve any more prophets. That's it, I'm taking away prophecy from you. Call them up. Toll free. Call them toll free. Yeah. Yeah.
In the Old Testament,
Yeah.
talks about cleansing or something, or forgiveness, every 50 years, what do they call that?
Let's not get into something else, Mark. Let's go on. Let's go on with the narrative. We can't switch off now. Veer off something else. So now comes Bil'am. He calls him up. He sends him a text. To Bil'am. He says, "I know that you're the number one sorcerer in the world." Balak calls him up. Sends him. Says, "Can you please come? And help me out because I have a situation over here. I got 2 million Jews on my back. These Jews. You know how it is, right? To beat them, it's like it's very hard. They're invincible. These people. They beat everybody already over here. The whole area they conquered. I feel like I'm scared. I'm shivering from my pants. Like, what can I do? So he says, you gotta come and help me. You gotta do something with it. So of course, right? What do you think? What this was for gratis? No, this was for payment. You understand? Bilam was taking money for that was his livelihood. He used to take money to come and curse somebody. If somebody had a dispute with somebody, he would curse one side, and take a big, nice big bonus there. You understand? This was the idea. It was all for payment. So they sent emissaries to Bilam, and they said to him, can you please come? So what happens is, right, that Kadosh Baruch Hu, he goes to sleep that night. So he tells them like this, these people, right, who came there, let's go to sleep tonight, stay over here, and in the morning I'll give you an answer. Why did he do it this way? Because he was hoping that Hashem will come to him in a dream that night, God will come to him and give him an answer if he's allowed to do it or not. He thought it was a great idea, by the way. You know why? Because they say they both hated the Jews. Balak and Bilam, they both were like the biggest anti-Semites. You know what I mean? You see from there, by the way, the sages teach us from there that if these two great anti-Semites couldn't beat the Jews, believe me, nobody else can do it because nobody was bigger than them. So don't even try, don't even try to beat the Jews. They're invincible, the Jews. What does that mean? That you cannot wipe them out. There's no way to wipe out the Jews. You can do harm to them, maybe, somehow, whatever, but to wipe them out is not possible. You know why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu protects them. Their protection. So therefore, right, what happens was that Bil'am and Balak got together. Bil'am, right now, tells them, wait for me, I got to get a drink tonight. So so HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem comes to him in a dream that night, right? As we said, right, it's not really here Hashem directly, it's going through the Satan, because, the channel of Bilam was through the Satan. So comes to him in a dream, right, and tells him, he says, who are these people that came to you? He asks him. So he says, oh, this is Balak ben Tzipor, a big king, from Moab, came and asked me to come and curse the Jews. Am I allowed to do this? So Hashem answers him, right, like this. Says, don't go curse them because these people are blessed. I bless them. I'm the ones who bless them. There's no way to curse them. There's no such a thing like that.
He believes in God?
Yeah, he was, but he was coming from the other side, the back door. It's not back channel. Yeah, exactly, back channel, right. So what happens is that he gets up in the morning, Bilam, and he tells Balak, he tells his emissaries, I'm sorry, but God doesn't allow me to go with you. But he didn't say it in a way like that. You know what he said? He does not allow me to go with you guys. Because you know why? Because you're small fries. You got to send bigger people over here. More people, more prominent emissaries. You guys are small fries. You got to send the Secretary of State. Secretary. All kinds of things like this. You got to send the big people over here. I'm a big person. I'm a big shot. So don't send me over here, little people. Little ministers, and little diplomats, from the embassy. Don't send me people like that. It's not my honor like that. So what happened was that the next day, Balak, he sent them also other emissaries, bigger level, whatever. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, he went to sleep, and this time HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked him, in the dream, he told him, he said, no, what happened? Again, you're not asking me the same question? I told you last night, don't go. So he says, you know what? He says, okay, I understand. You're probably doing it for your fee, right? You're going to get a fee for this. So he says, since you're getting a fee for it, he says, you know what? Okay, fine. But on one condition, I let you go, right? You're only going to say what I tell you to say when you go there. That's all. You have no permission to say whatever I don't tell you. So Bilam said, okay, you know what? Fine. I'll do that. I'll go. So what happens is, right, that now goes Bilam in the morning with them. And all of a sudden, right, when he's going on the way, he has a donkey, right, that he's riding on. So what happens is, right, that now the angel of God came, tried to stop him, So the donkey, Bilam didn't see the angel, but the donkey saw, The donkey was on a higher level. than Bilam, right? So he saw the angel, so he got out of the way, he backed into the wall. He sidestepped into the wall. This happened 3 times, by the way. So once this happened the third time, Bilam realized something was wrong, So then the angel appeared to him and he said, you know what? He says, I'm very angry at you that you're going because I told you not to go. I told you. But nevertheless, right, Bilam was so adamant to go. In the end, HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed him to go, even though this was going to be, by the way, his destruction. His destruction was going to come from this. This is the idea. So, comes now, right? Can you go around and give him a pat on the back? Give him a pat on the back, yeah. Because otherwise it's going to make noise. Okay, so, okay, so what happens like this now, right? Comes Bil'am and joins up with Balak. So Balak tells him, he says, what? He says, what's with you? First time I sent emissaries to you, you refused. He says, what? Don't you think I can give you your proper reward that you deserve? So he says, what? You think I can't give you? So they said, by the way, this was like a prophecy. What does that mean? In the end, he wasn't going to get nothing. You know why? Because he was going to come up dry with nothing, right? With zero. That's the idea. So what happened was that now, right, once these two forces got together, they were very formidable. It says in Zohar Kadosh, by the way, regarding the if you join up the names Balak and Bil'am, right, according to the Hebrew letters, you know what comes out from there? Amalek. Amalek comes out. What does that mean? Right? Balak is Bet Mem Kuf, Bet Lamed Kuf, right? And then you have Bil'am, Bet Lamed Ayin Mem. So if you take, right, the last 3 letters of Bil'am's name and the last 2 letters of Balak's name, comes out the word Amalek. Can you imagine? What does that mean? That these two, when they joined up as a force together, they were basically on like the same wavelength as Amalek, the ultimate enemy of the Jewish people. Amalek was that's what they were. Same spiritual value. This is the idea. So Bilam, they say, by the way, where did he learn all this, wisdom that he had, sorcery, right? To give you a little background into Bilam. So they say that there was 2 fallen angels, There was 2 fallen angels that fell from the sky, and they went to the earth, and they did all kinds of sins, these angels. So they were locked up in a place. It's called Hare Kedim, in the east, the eastern areas, right? They were locked over there in the mountains. So Bilam used to go over there. Whoever wanted to learn sorcery would go to these angels and learn from them. So he took lessons, private lessons from them. He used to go there. So he used to go, take from them lessons, This was like a daily basis. He used to go there, take lessons. So he learned a lot of things about sorcery, that nobody else knew. He was the top-notch guy of the generation. They say also, by the way, about Bil'am, that he was the most impure human being that ever lived. Nobody was more defiled and contaminated than him, He was the ultimate contamination. Question is, what made him to so contaminated? They say, by the way, that if a person wants to get connected to the forces of evil, you know what he has to do? He has to do certain kinds of sins that defile him even more, to make him even more defiled, to make him even more contaminated. So what was his contamination? You know what he did? He used to have sexual relations with his donkey, bestiality, That's what he used to do. You understand? Why was he doing this? Well, he can't find a woman, for God's sakes. What? He can't find a girlfriend, right? What's the problem? So you know what the whole thing was? To contaminate himself, because the person who does these kinds of things gets more contaminated, more and more and more and more. And what happens is that he connects to the sort of powers of evil like that. The only way to connect to the powers of evil is to contaminate yourself, like totally.
Do you think that there are some people today, not to that level?
Not on that level, right? Not on that level. Yeah, there are people like that, but that this level is very unique. Very, very, very unusual, right? The wisdom that he had and the contamination, that he used to bring upon himself. Also, they say, by the way, another thing about Bilam. Bilam was not only a troublemaker for himself; he was also a troublemaker for the whole world. What does that mean? They say that he caused the whole world to sin as well.
Sounds like Obama. Yeah, he planted the seeds for it.
That's interesting what you're saying. Yeah. Let me tell you what was the sin that he caused? This was one of the greatest, downfalls of mankind that he caused. They say, right, that after the flood, the Mabu, the times of Noah, there was a flood, right? So afterwards, because the people realized, God punished them so greatly like this, destroyed the whole world. So they now took upon themselves to be careful regarding sexual, sins, promiscuity, to guard themselves from that. So how did they guard themselves? The Goyim took upon themselves at that time not to like mess around with no, we're talking about like little virgin girls, to mess them up, to like this, to not to right to let them to let them to let them get married, and not to put a blemish on them like that, to blemish them. Capuchos, what your friend talks about it, right? So yeah, so this kind of thing. They took on not to do promiscuity, like there's also adultery, homosexuality. They took on the goyim at that time to be careful about these things, So what happened was that Bil'am, he ruined everything. He came to the people, what he told them? He said, you know what? You can do whatever you want. It doesn't apply anymore, now, so that guy will forgive you, whatever. Give them one of these, kakanami stories, whatever. He died for you, whatever. He died for you, so don't worry. Now you can all die. No problem. That was the idea. So he told them one of these kakanami stories. So what happened was that now the world became again, like fell into prostitution, they got degraded again, prostitution, promiscuity, all kinds of things like this. It became, a circus, balagan,
Rolling around with the devil.
bardaki, that's what it became. That's the idea, I would say. So what happened was that the great damage that he caused by doing all these things on himself, to the world, and now he was also trying to destroy the Jewish people, God forbid. Can you imagine? Now coming to do this, another big favor for the world. Destroy the Jews, right? The next thing in line, right? So what happens is that Kadosh Baruch Hu, right, now sees these two getting together. So what happens is right away they start to work, just to start working. What does that mean? That Balak tells him, he says, you know what? Let me find a good place for you. He was the location guy, right? Says, let me find a good place for you to curse from, and we'll curse from there, So he takes him to a place like that. So Bilam says, okay, fine, make an altar over here. Let's do some sacrifices. So he goes into the background and tries to get some, prophecy from God, whatever, to curse, whatever. So instead of making a curse, he comes back to Balak and starts to bless the Jewish people. In a sense, so Balak looks at him and says, what are you joking me? He says, I brought you here to curse them. You're blessing them? What are you doing? He says, what, you're making a joke out of me? You're making a mockery out of me? So he says, what can I do? He says, I'm under the control of God. I told you, I can't do anything God doesn't allow me to do. Whatever he puts in my mouth, that was the deal that I made with him. Whatever he puts in my mouth, I have to say. So he says, you know what? He says, okay, fine. This time it didn't work. Let's try it again, one more time, right? This time, he tells him, you know what? Let's go to a different location. We'll try to curse from a different location. Why does the location matter so much? What's the reason why? You know why? Because now he wants to take him to a place where you can only see the bad parts of the Jewish people, the sinners, Only the view. What does that mean, the sinners? We're talking about Shevet Dan, right? Shevet Dan, they were known to be sinners, they were idolaters. So therefore what happened was, he took them over there to a place where he only sees that tribe of Dan. That's what he did. He took them over there, and again, right, he went, to do his hocus pocus, comes back, blesses the Jewish people again. Right? He tells them again, you did this to me. He says, you're making a joke out of me, right? You're making a mockery out of me. What is this? What is this business? I told you to curse them again. You're blessing them. They tried one more location, after that also. Why that location they tried? Because they took him to a place, Balak, he was able to figure out with sorcery a certain area where the Jews were destined to sin over there, to do a big sin. So therefore he said, you know what? Probably from this place the curse will come in. You know what I mean? They tried over there, it didn't work either, right? So again, Bilam, he blessed the Jewish people, right? Blessed them again. So Balak tells Bilam, he says, I'm sorry, my friend, but looks like, your services were not rendered. So, you're not going to get a penny from me, What am I going to give you? What do you think? You're going to get travel expenses? I'm going to pay for your airfare? Go back home, you're lucky that you're alive. I let you live. Go back home and sit in your house. So once Bilam hears all this, right, he says, hey, wait a second, I came here for money, like, where's my money? This is my living, this is my bread and butter. What am I supposed to do? Well, no, right? So therefore what he did was, he realized it was not possible to curse the Jewish people. No such a thing like that. They're blessed. So you know what he did now? He figured out a better way to harm the Jewish people. This time it worked. What did he do? He told the Balak like this, he says, you know what, let me tell you something. He says, there's no way that you can curse the Jewish people. No such a thing like that. Then you cannot curse them. God protects them. So he says, there's only one thing you can make them do, cause them to sin, and then automatically God will punish them. You cause them to sin, and when they sin, God will punish them. That's the way it is.
Right.
That's the way it works. Right? This is what they're talking about in the Vatican also, these kinds of things. So what happens is now, right, comes Bilam and tells him, he says, you know what, the God of these Jews, their God, there's one thing that he hates the most from everything else. You know what it is? Promiscuity, sexual sins. So he says, I want you to devise some kind of a scheme to get the Jews to sin, to do some, promiscuity, sexual, sins, all kinds of things like this. So what did he tell him? He said, you know what, let's devise a scheme for you. Let's make an outline, let's make a diagram here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he tells him, you know what, I want you to set up some shops. So Jews will come over there to do some shopping. You know how Jews like to shop, right? They like to go to the shopping malls or whatever. So set up some shopping malls. On the outside, there's going to be some merchandise over there. That's what they did, right? And there's some old lady, some old fogey there lady selling stuff. And then inside, there's going to be a young lady, nicer looking lady, good looking girl. So what happens was, it was like a bait and switch kind of thing, First they would come to the old lady. The old lady would tell them to go inside, to shop in there. The prices are cheaper, Rock bottom prices over there, right? So what happened was, they used to, right, they would go inside, and once they would go inside, that lady would bait them into doing something, some monkey business over there. You understand? This was the way it worked. They used wine, they got some to drink some wine, maybe also smoke a joint, whatever. And all kinds of things like this, right? All kinds of stuff. So once they would do that, they would proposition the lady to do something with her. And then what would happen is, the lady would tell him, okay, I'll do it with you on one condition. Go bow down to my idol first, go worship my idol. If you do worship my idol, so they got them to do promiscuity and also idolatry, Again, it worked, by the way, They baited him like this. So what happened was, 24,000 Jews died because of that. Because of the sin that Bilam, right, caused them to do. So Bilam now got a fee for that, you understand? For this advice that he gave, right? This piece of advice that he gave, right? He got a nice big fat fee for that, right? Probably, right? So what we're talking about now is that Bilam, he knew how to damage the people, even though that he wasn't able to curse them. So in the end, he got something done. But nevertheless, right? They say that Bilam in the end was killed. When was he killed? They say that when he came to get his fee from Balak, to collect his money. So the Jews saw him over there, they saw him coming. So they went and they killed him, They went Pinchas, right? Pinchas was one of the grandson of Aaron HaKohen.
He had no power to stop this? No.
It's a whole story, by the way, regarding that, right? I want to tell you. So what happened was, right, that Bilam had all kinds of powers of sorcery. So Pinchas was also a big tzaddik, he knew how to fight with these things. Mm-hmm. So what happened was that Bilam knew how to fly in the air, he had this spell that he used to say. He would just fly away, like a birdie, So what happened was that Pinchas was also able to fly, So he also said the name of God. He was also, so they went to fly. They chased after him in the air, and they caught up to him and they stabbed him, they killed him. That's what happened. That's how Bilam died, right?
I think that's where they got the idea of the warlocks,
There's a lot of copycatting going on. Right? That's the way it is, right? A lot of copycatting.
Time machine.
So what happened was, right, that Bilam in the end, right, he met his fate, right? In the end, he got his. He did the damage. He did damage.
Sure.
He did damage, but in the end, he got what he deserved. I want to tell you, Rabbi, that regarding this story that he caused these people to sin, these Jews to sin, there's also some background regarding that, right? What does that mean? That these Jews that he caused them to sin, they were like weak Jews. They were like spiritually weak. Without any
Why didn't God
backbone.
protect them?
This was the plan. This is the plan. A person has free will. He can do sins if he wants to do.
Weak.
You know what I mean? So what happened? Why were they weak? So they say that these Jews were from the Erevav, from the mixed multitude that converted. What happened was that they married into the Shevet Shimon. They intermarried, and the children that they had from the Erevav and Shevet Shimon, they were the ones who did this sin. So therefore, right, everything comes into the right place. What does that mean? God's plan, is very broad. It's very deep. These people were weak, so they succumbed to the sin. They were enticed into this because they came from bad roots. They say, by the way, about Bilam, something amazing I want to tell you. Right? I wrote in the advertising that I said that Bilam was the most evil person that ever lived. Why was he more evil than anybody else? Right? We have to understand what that means, right? What makes him so bad like this? So let's compare this guy and Hitler, right? How does it compare? Like Mark said, right? How do you compare one to the other? If you put one against the other, right? World championship, right? Of evil, right? Which one wins? So the truth is, right, that Bilam wins hands down. No question about it. He wins hands down. Why is that? What's the reason why? So the Chazal tell us, right? We already mentioned this before, that the one who causes a person to sin is considered to be worse than the one who kills him.
Really?
Why is that? Because when you cause a person to sin, when you kill somebody, right? Let's say, for instance, you kill somebody, right? Just physically kill him, like Hitler did, You're taking away from this world, but in the world to come, he'll have a portion. He'll rise in the Tchiat HaMetim. He'll have a portion in the world to come. When you cause a person to sin, you're taking away his world to come, because he's losing his merit for the world to come. Understand? So therefore, you're taking away this world. You're taking away the next world. It's considered to be worse than the one who kills him. Right? Spiritually, this is a much, much worse sin. So this is the reason that Bilam Rabbatai is the worst of the worst. You know why? Because he caused the Jews to sin. He caused the whole world to sin, as we said, right? In promiscuity. He brought everybody down with him. You understand? Down. He brought them down. First he brought himself down, as we said, right? He was living with his donkey, He brought himself down. Then he brought the world down. And then he brought the Jewish people down also. Understand? This is a person who caused the whole world to sin. So therefore, there's nothing worse than that, a person who does these kinds of things, causes the whole world out to be degraded like that, he has no portion in the world to come.
Would you say that we've had people like similar to...
Yeah, like Yeshu, he caused the whole world to get, that's the idea, people like this. Yeah, we have people like that. What, people cause people to sin, you mean? Yeah, there were all kinds of false messiahs that we had, all kinds of false saviors. They made themselves into a messiah, we had people like that. Like Shabbatai Tzvi. I don't know if you know the story about Shabbatai Tzvi. He was in Turkey, right? There was a whole story behind that. There was also all kinds of false messiahs that we had, throughout the ages, who proclaimed themselves to be, to divine and all kinds of. There was all kinds of things people like that.
Is there a character like this floating around today?
Yeah, we have, you're talking about the left, the left people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because the left, their whole prerogative is to cause people to sin, to tell them everything is allowed, everything is permitted, do whatever you want,
Absolutely.
we'll give you a free house, free job, free this, free that, free this, but just go do your sins, and everything will be okay. These people are destroying the world.
I told you this.
They're destroying the world.
I told you this today.
So, regarding that, I want to tell you something interesting, right? That in the Gemara,
This is a threat.
of course it's a threat.
I mean, before the world is saved, like the Jews were saved throughout history, so many times over.
Yeah.
These four bitches, excuse my language, can destroy this country.
There are people who are worse than them too. Believe me when I tell you, there are people who are worse.
Of course
There are people who are worse. Believe me.
They're actually
These are minor leaguers. These people.
Listen,
Understand? They're not major leagues.
Rabbi,
Right? Exactly.
Rabbi, the people that are worse than them,
Yeah.
that are pulling the strings, are the people that are...
To be honest with you, David, these people are clowns. They're clowns.
Soros is paying for all
That's the
this.
idea. That's the major leaguer. That's the major
Obama
leaguer.
planted the seeds for all this.
That's the idea.
You wouldn't see what's going on now.
Yeah.
Even 50% of it, if Obama wasn't president for 8 years. He started all this.
Yeah. That's the. Yeah.
What's his name? Norman, the other day in Duncan, this guy that served in Vietnam, he goes, David, you don't know this country, this all started back in the 60s. That was something else. When Kennedy gave blacks the freedom and this.
Let's get back to Torah. We get too much in politics.
Was it Kennedy?
Let's get back to Torah, guys. Let's go back to the roots. Let's go back to our roots, right? As they say, right? The roots,
Well,
roots,
Kennedy
right?
started that shit.
So, Gingdal, in the Gemara, in Masechet Sanhedrin, in the Mishnah, and also in the Midrash, it says, right, that there are several people, four individuals who have no portion in the world to come. Right? These are four like famous individuals. So who are they? Right? We're talking about Gehazi. Right? We're talking about Achitophel. We're talking about Doeg Adomi, and the fourth one is Bila'am.
Really?
Bila'am has no portion in the world to come.
So,
That's what it says, right?
Yeshua actually makes it?
Good question, by the way, what you're asking. We have to discuss that. We have to talk about that. You know what it is? That many times what happens is that a person, because he got punished in this world by losing his life, he was executed, and also he went to Gainam, Jojochet,
Yeah.
So that can absolve him from his sins, and he can have a portion.
Is it true that
Yeah.
if your wife
Yeah.
puts you through agony
Yeah.
in this world, that
Ah.
a man goes automatically to heaven? No question?
Right, they say, right, if a person has a bad wife, that's one of the things, right? It says in the Gemara, in Masechet Gitin, if a person has a bad wife, and she because of that, all his life is like very bitter. She's always giving him a hard time. Right, you know how it is, right? When it's bad, it's really bad, right? So because he has to, suffer from her, so he has to suffer from her for all his life like that. That means that they never got divorced. Because if they did, he's not suffering from her anymore. You know what I mean? That's the idea.
So You gotta get it. There's always something in mind. You gotta get the get. Always something in mind.
So what happens is like this, right? That since he was, the person is suffering like something extraordinarily like that, all his life, they absolve him from Gainam. He doesn't have to go to a Gainam, to purgatory. He's absolved from that. He goes straight to Olam Haba, because he suffered so greatly
Why
like
I'm
that.
suffering till this day because of our actions.
But yeah, you're also suffering from other reasons, There's all kinds of other things, I mean, we can talk about that all day, but the point is like this, but interesting, right? That they say all these characters, Bil'am, regarding Bil'am, he's the worst out of all of them.
Wow.
Why is that? How do we know he's the worst? It doesn't say in the Mishnah that he's the worst. But it says in the Midrash, there's also another opinion brought down over there. They say that regarding Achitophel and Doeg Adomi and Gehazi, they have a portion of the world to come. When it comes to Bil'am, they agree, no portion of the world to come. So meaning what? That even according to the other opinion, that they say these three will have a portion of the world to come, they agree when it comes to Bil'am, no portion of the world to come. Right? That's interesting. So the question is, why the differentiation between one and the other? So this actually has to do with Gilgul, What does that mean? Reincarnation. What that means is that a person, according to the deeds that he did in that lifetime, had no portion of the world to come. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring him back again, to try to fix him up. You know what I mean? So then it's possible that if he gets fixed up, he will have a portion of the world to come, even though this time he messed up big time. He right? Royal mess he made. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu has mercy on them, brings them back again. So what does that mean? That these three, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was able to fix them like that, to bring them back in a reincarnation and fix them up. When it comes to Bil'am, even like that he wasn't able to fix them. Wasn't able to fix Bil'am like that.
Isn't it true that I remember studying with you many years ago before you moved to Israel, in the Talmud, Yeshu is quoted, he's actually repenting. He says, I committed all these sins, and now I'm suffering.
We're talking about when he died already, right? When he was already dead. That's something else, right? We're talking about that this guy conjured him up from the dead, right? That's the idea. Yeah. He admitted that he was messed up. Yeah.
Right?
Right.
The worms didn't get
So
him.
he was being burned over there, right? Whatever. That's what happens. So now what happens is like this, right? That Bil'am is the only one that Kadosh Baruch Hu wasn't able to fix him. He was a very, very evil person, like fundamentally, absolutely rooted in evil,
Was he born like this character? Or?
Well, everybody has free will. But they say, right, how far did the evil of Bil'am go, right? Just to give you an example, they say, right, that he was so defiled when he died, his corpse, that was on the ground, it got divided up into like pieces, and each one became a snake, and would kill people,
12 pieces.
He was so defiled that his whole body was contaminated, turned into snakes, harmful. He was a totally defiled person. They say besides that, right, he was so filthy, this guy. He was such an evil person, such an evil eye, Anywhere that he would look, he would destroy whatever he would see. You know.
That was the boy. That was the story. 5 Easy Pieces.
Right. In other words, why is that? Because he was such a jealous person. Somebody who wants to like bring you down.
There are people. Like
Yeah, there are people like that.
Not
Evil eye,
everybody,
right?
but there
This
are.
was like the ultimate. This was the ultimate thing. So his eye was so evil. Anything he would look at, to stare at something, it would be destroyed. This is exactly why Balak brought him, to do this to the Jewish people. Can you imagine? So Kadosh Baruch Hu did us such a big favor by protecting us, because if it would have been up to the forces of nature, he could have destroyed anything. This guy, what was his expertise, by the way? Before that, he did this job, right? He botched up this job. There was also another time that he did this, right? Which was that there was a war between two nations, right? Sichon, Melech Mori, and Moab. So what happened was they were getting into a war, a skirmish with one and the other. So the king of the Amorites, right, Sichon, hired Bil'am to come and curse the other side. So he came and cursed them, and he won the war because of that. So now he got a big name. He had a big name like that. They said, this guy, whatever he curses, that's it. Finished. And that's what it was. He got a big reputation. So he was making now a lot of money. You know what I mean? Big time, right? That was the idea. So Bil'am, Kadosh Baruch Hu, by the way, in his great mercies, even though he was so bad like that, he tried to fix him too. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu tries to fix everybody.
Bird brain.
So what did he do? He brought him back as a reincarnation. Right? The story goes as who? It says Zohar Kadosh that he was brought back as Nabal HaKarmeli. Right? What's the story? Nabal HaKarmeli was a Jew. He came back as a Jew this time. You understand? This is the idea. So Nabal HaKarmeli was a Jew. Who was this Karmeli guy? He was alive in the time of David HaMelech, of King David. Right? He was a relative of his. Distant relative. So what happened was, right, that King David, when he was anointed to be king already by Shmuel HaNavi, Shaul was chasing him to kill him. He was jealous of him. So he was always on the run, like a huge, nomad, fugitive, running here, running there, running. That's the way it was. If he would stay in one place, he would have been assassinated. So what happened was that one day, right, they were hiding out in a certain area, some desert, So Nabal HaKarmeli was living in that area as well. He was David's relative. So he was a wealthy man, Nabal HaKarmeli, He was a wealthy man. Tycoon. What was his wealth? He had a lot of, he was a big shepherd, like huge number of animals. Thousands of animals, like big shot. So what happened was that he used to send out his animals to graze in the desert. And David was exactly in that area. So what happened was, right, that the criminals would come, the pirates, to try to steal some animals, all kinds of things like this. So David, also some lions would come, to try to kill, to eat them, some wolves, lions, all kinds of things. So David would protect them, from all kinds of harm. When he was there, he protected them. Why did he do that, by the way? Because he was a relative of Nabal HaKarmeli, right? But besides that also, what happened was, in the end, once he guarded his animals for such a long time, he came and asked Nabal HaKarmeli for a fee, some like nominal way to pay for that, because the truth is, right, if he wouldn't have guarded, he had 600 people with him there, a big group, big army, so they were able to guard really well. You know what I mean? Like foolproof. So what happened was that in the end, he sends some people, to Nabal HaKarmeli, and asks them, he says, what? He says, I know today you're having like a big party at your house, whatever, They used to make like parties for certain things. So they had like a big bash. A lot of food, catering, big time, right? So what happens is that he sends some emissaries over there, David, and tells them, he says, when it says, we're hungry, we're in the fields, we're very close by to you. We defended your animals for like a long time, So can you send us some food, leftovers, you know what I mean? You know how it is, right? When you have a catering, tons of food get left over. You know what I mean? It goes in the garbage. It's a shame, by the way, how much food gets wasted in catering. We're talking about like, it's unbelievable, You could feed like all of Africa with that food, that they throw out, whatever, So what happens is like that they
them with the food.
yeah, and it's all like fancy good, fancy food, fancy stuff, and they throw in the garbage. It's unbelievable, how much waste there is in this business, in the catering business. Unbelievable, right? So he tells him, he says, what? Just give us your leftovers, We gotta eat something. We're hungry. We guarded your animals, So Nabal HaKarmeli, right? This guy was the Gilgul of Bila'Am.
Oh, wow.
You understand? That's who he was.
He didn't know.
He didn't know. But what? Also here, right? Naval, his name, what does Naval mean in Hebrew? Low life, right? He was a low life. Naval, he was a low right? He was a low life, right? Just like his name implies, right? So what happened was, right, that once he got this request from them, he told them, he says, who is this David? He goes, David? He says, this guy ran away from his master, from the king. I should feed him? He's a fugitive. He should be put in jail. So once David heard this, he came back and they told him. He said, this is the way he answered us, What a disgrace. So David said, he says, no problem. He says, you know what I'm going to do to this guy? He says, I'm already anointed as king. He rebelled against me. I have power now to kill him. I'm going to go there, right, tonight. I'm going to finish him off, Nothing will be left. So David had that plan that night to go and assassinate Naval Carmeli. So what happens is like this, right? And Naval Carmeli had a wife. And this woman, Abigail, right, was her name, right, was a very righteous woman. She was like a prophetess, this lady, right? She was a big tzaddiket. So what happens is, right, that David goes that night to assassinate Naval Carmeli, right? He goes over there. So what happens is that as he starts walking towards the house, who does he see all of a sudden coming down from the house? The house was on top of a mountain. You understand? So what happens is that she decided, in order to avert, she already knew, right, by the way, that this was a big problem, that he didn't want to give any food to David's people. So in order to avert any harm, you know what she did? She took like donkeys and she laden them with food to bring them down to David, all the leftovers. She herself went down with her workers to bring down the food for David. So what happens is, right, David is going up the mountain to kill this guy, and she's coming down the mountain to bring him food. This is the story, right? Can you imagine? So all of a sudden, right, they meet up together. David sees her from a distance, So they say, what did he see, right? He saw that she was a very beautiful lady, She was like knockout, like the most gorgeous thing you ever saw in your life, right? So what happened was, right, he saw her, like they say, he saw her like her leg, but she was exposed, something, whatever. So he got so attracted to her, he ran over, to her. He thought maybe I find my wife, my soulmate, whatever. So he went down there to meet her. So right away he comes. What does he want to tell her? I want you to marry me. He wants to marry her. So what happens is, right, that she asked him. He says, my lord, your honor the king, I'm bringing you food. Where are you going? Wait down there. It's coming. The food is coming, right? The delivery is on its way. So he says, food? He says, from what? From who are you bringing food? What is this, catering? What? I didn't order catering, right? I didn't call up any restaurants. What's going on over there, right? So he says, no. He says, I'm the wife of Naval Carmeli. He says, I know my husband, what he did was wrong. He says, just like his name, Naval, he's a low life. I know he's a low life. He says, therefore, I'm coming to atone for his sin and bring you the food. So David says, you should know. He says, I'm going right now to kill your husband. He says, he's liable to death because he rebelled against me. I'm already king. I was anointed to be king. So what happened was that this lady, right, was so righteous, Abigail, they say, that she convinced him not to do this sin, right, of killing him. Why was it a sin to kill him? What's the reason why? He rebelled against the king. Whoever rebels against the king is considered to be liable to death. So you know what the answer is? The answer is that even though he was anointed to be king, he wasn't appointed yet officially, right? He wasn't coronated yet. So the job was still occupied by Shaul. So therefore, technically speaking, he still was not king. So Abigail told him, he says, excuse me, your honor the king, but you still haven't been coronated. You're not really the king. You can't really kill my husband. According to halakha, according to Jewish law, you're not allowed to kill him. So once he heard that, he agreed. He realized that she's right. So he says, God bless you. You saved me from doing a sin. If I would have killed this guy, it would have been on my shoulders. This blood, would have been blood on my hands. You understand? So what happened was that she saved him from doing, right, this sin of killing Naval Carmeli. But nevertheless, right, they say that week, in several days, you know what happened? He died anyway, Naval Carmeli, from the sin that he didn't want to give David the food. He died. HaKadosh Baruch Hu struck him. So he didn't have to kill him himself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu struck him and he died. And that's what happened. You understand? So what do we see from there, Rabbi? We see several things, right? Number one, of course, is that when a person has a good wife, you hear, Johnny? When a person has a good wife, you know what she does? She saves him from doing sins. A wise woman, when he sees the husband doing something wrong, she tells him, points out, this is not allowed what you're doing. She has to tell him in a respectful way, obviously. You can't speak to your husband disrespectfully. But a wise woman always saves her husband from doing a sin. This is exactly what she did. So therefore, what happened was that Kadosh Baruch Hu, eventually he struck him anyway, Naval Carmeli, and he died. So David HaMelech told Avigal when he met her, he said, he says, once your husband is dead, he says, I want you to come and marry me. So that's exactly what happened, right? David eventually married her, this lady. She was a prophetess, she was a very holy lady, this guy, very lady. He was very, very, very beautiful and very holy, and she was very righteous, and so she became David's wife. That's what happened, right? But regarding Bil'am, what do you see from here, right? That even though Kadosh Baruch Hu tried to fix up Bil'am by bringing him in a reincarnation as Naval Carmeli, he still turned out to be a lowlife. So therefore, Kadosh Baruch Hu was not able to save Bil'am. This is why all the sages agree that when it comes to Bil'am, he has no portion in the world to come. There's no portion in the world to come for Bil'am. He was so defiled, he was so contaminated. And by the way, Rabbi, what's the reason why Bil'am was worse than all of them? You know why? Because since he caused everybody to sin, himself, the whole world, he caused them into prostitution, brought them into promiscuity, and also he brought the Jews to sin, as we said, right? Shevet Shimon. So a person who does that, who causes people to sin like that, he degrades the whole world, he has no portion in the world to come. He's considered to be worse than Hitler. Because Hitler only killed your body. This guy's killing your soul. Something even worse, you understand? So therefore, Rabbi, we see from here that Bil'am was the worst person in the world. Nobody was more evil than him. Nobody. He took the prize, right? You understand? So therefore, there was no way to fix him up. There was nothing that we could do. So can you imagine, right? We have to know one thing, that if this defiled, degraded, this contaminated person couldn't destroy the Jewish people with all his powers, you should know that nobody can. They can try all they want, all that they try to do, they will never destroy the Jewish people. Because Kadosh Baruch Hu blessed them. Once he blesses them, once he shows them to be the chosen people, nobody can obliterate them. They have no chance. Because if Bil'am couldn't do it, the ultimate archenemy of the Jewish people, for sure anybody else cannot do it. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen. Thanks for coming. Chazak u'baruch. Laila tov.
So here's the question.
As long as